Everything's on fire. Everything's on fire. Everything's on fire.
Welcome back, everybody. As always, it is Monday night. You are here with the greatest IDP duo this side of the Mississippi. It is the IDP Heat Seeker Show. Tonight is a fun one. I've already got Kraig laughing, so we know it's going to be a good night. We are talking defensive tackles. I know it's a panty drop of an episode. Everybody gets hot and bothered when we talk DTs. So, with that being said, Mr. Kraig, how are we doing tonight, man?
It's a Monday. It was certainly a Monday. Boy, was it ever Monday. But nothing terrible. You know, it was a drag. In the summer, it seems like it drags more because, you know, if you have kids that are out of school, I've had to answer the question, well, you don't get a summer break. I don't know how many times in the past, 2 weeks. So, being reminded of that all the time is nice. But had a chance to relax a little bit this week and get some yard work done when it wasn't too crazy hot. So it's good to be productive. How are you doing?
Yeah, it was, where I'm at in Fort Wayne, it's been up in the upper 80s, close to 90 for many a days now. And you don't want to be outside. I go outside with the kid, because same here. We got two girls. We take them out front. We try to run them. We take them in the back. We got a play set. We try to have fun out back, man. They're like, yeah, I'd rather just go inside and, play video games or color. They're big. My oldest is big into art. They would rather do anything that's inside. And I'm always like, guys, you're missing out on the fun of being outside in the summer. I remember growing up, I would not come in the house until you couldn't see outside. And that was only if somebody was yelling for me. I hated being inside the house. And that was pre-video games. I really didn't get video games until the 90s. But, such is life. I am excited. I'm excited that it is summer after all. We do get sun. We do get warmth. But we are also just over a month away from training camp. I was looking yesterday. Training camps open as early as the 21st. I believe Dallas and Pittsburgh report the 21st because they are the Hall of Fame game. Then the Bucs report on, I believe, the 27th because they play the opener, and Thursday the 9th, I believe. And then everybody else, I believe, is after that. I could be off on the dates. You can Google it. But I know we're darn close to training camps, which is exciting. But we have some news. We have some IDP news. Maybe not banging news, but it's at least some IDP relevant news. So, Kraig, talk to me. Tell me what's going on in the world.
Yeah, so we'll start with the one that really isn't on topic, so to speak, for tonight for our specific topic. But Jerome Baker signed a 3-year, about $39 million contract with around $28 million guaranteed. So he got a nice size extension there for the Dolphins. So here's one of those really interesting things to me. There's a big sort of disconnect in how he's viewed, because if you sort of look at run stuffing, your typical old school linebacker stuff, he does not do well with that and has not done well with that. He's improved, and he's been moved around. Like last year was outside linebacker. He had been in the middle before. But he is great in coverage, which makes it super interesting, sort of like, that new way of looking at stuff for the NFL. Clearly, they like what he's doing there. There was some stats I was looking at, as part of this debate with him on how he was like a top 5 guy in terms of expected points allowed in coverage. He was just way up there. And the other stuff, like I said, he's improved upon, especially like last year for his pass rushing. Now, that could be a number of things. It's not always just that player improving, but certainly to be able to up it to, I think it was like 7 sacks last year he got, and more tackles for a loss. He had a better all-around season as the defense improved, which, you would hope to see from a young linebacker. But they're clearly invested in him, like what they have in him, and with the league moving to more of a passing league. He was a top 30-ish linebacker last year, which is a weird year. So I'm not saying, that's a ceiling or anything. But we're going to need another year out of him to sort of see what we're going to get out of him. I wouldn't be expecting him to be a linebacker 1. A back-end linebacker 2, I think, is a good expectation for him, and he would be in the potential situation to exceed that. But I wouldn't be holding my breath expecting amazing things this year. How do you feel?
Yeah. Baker's a really talented individual. He does a good job bouncing back into coverage. It is a really interesting position to see him in because Miami's quickly becoming one of those defenses you want to get pieces of. From a rookie perspective, Jalen Phillips is going to step in there and be a nice guy off the edge. And it is exciting to see the way this defense is developing. I think with the addition of McKinney there in the offseason, they got the linebacker from Houston. They really become a formidable linebacking core. And I think on the outside right now is really kind of their weakest. Outside of Jalen Phillips, they don't have a lot. So I think Baker's kind of the sky's the limit. I would love to see them get him a little bit more involved attacking and doing some things that direction, but I would anticipate him continuing to see more and more action when it comes to getting pass deflections, interceptions. Like, he should be in a good position to do that. I trust Brian Flores. I trust what they're doing there. So Baker's a guy that if you can get him, I would definitely stash him. He probably is more of a flex type guy currently, but definitely has room to improve. And is still young enough to. So I'm excited about it. I think it's a big deal.
Yep. It's IDP relevant. He's a guy that, unless you're in the sort of really beginner depths of IDP, he's going to be starting on a team for you. Maybe not you specifically, but in the league. So he's an IDP relevant guy. He's locked in and an improving defense, which I think is going to have an improving offense as well. So let's see what happens.
And our boy Marcus is in the chat. Welcome. We are definitely going to talk OSA because we are talking about our top 10 defensive tackles, and he is in both of our top 10 rookie defensive tackle conversations. So we will get to that here shortly. We do have one more piece of news that is actually defensive tackle specifically relevant. If you're a fan of the Vikings or if you're a fan of Sheldon Richardson, the news we're hearing here is interesting. It looks like there is a reuniting that's potentially going to be happening between Richardson and the Vikings. If you check out, NFL trade rumors or some of the sites are reporting that, coming from Field Yates, it looks like the Vikings are close to a deal with Sheldon Richardson. I think that is an interesting – there could be some fantasy relevance to it, but not – I don't know that he really is ever going to be startable on a weekly basis. I think his best days were, behind him. But I think he could step in easily and be a nice rotational piece. But unfortunately, they've got, Pierce and Tomlinson, and they drafted Jaylen Twyman. So it's a deep, deep defensive tackle room. So this may be more of a depth move than a starter move. How do you feel about it, Kraig?
Yeah, so, last year was a very different situation with where he was. And if you're talking about the defensive tackle or interior line specific leagues, he was a guy that was worth having and worth starting. I don't think, like you said, to your point, without some other things going on, you're going to see that again. This Vikings defense, and I'm not trying to jinx our friend Sully in the chat here, but it has the chance to be a sneaky good defense if they're going to be healthy. Now, we know that's a big if. There's always stuff that plays into it, like their secondary last year had tons of problems with, young guys. And then I don't even recall if we got clarification on the end result here, but I know Jeff Gladney had been in some legal trouble. I think it was their first round pick last year. Mm-hmm. And they went out and they did things to address that. They have Patrick Peterson. How that's going to play out, it's better than what they had last year. So, Dantzler, they still have. They went out. Wasn't it Breeland they recently signed to? I think it was they signed Rashad Breeland. They also brought back Mackenzie Alexander, who was in Cincy last year. Yeah. So they're trying to get the band back together at the cornerback. And then they got Xavier Woods, who probably isn't going to have a ton of fantasy relevancy, but he's a fine NFL safety to pair with Harrison there. So. If they're healthy, they're going to have a chance to be a much improved defense and make some noise in a division. Brad, if Rodgers is gone, all bets are off. Anything can happen. I'm not saying the Lions will win. but pretty much anything else, can
So
happen.
you're telling me there's a chance.
If Rodgers isn't there, you have a chance, Brad.
I like it. So those are two pieces of IDP relevant news. Now we get on to the hot topic of the evening, the panty dropper, if you will, defensive tackles. We are talking rookie defensive tackles. Now, Osa is not our top defensive tackle. Our top defensive tackle is also in the NFC North, though. So why don't you get us started in talking about the man, the myth, Levi Onwuzurike of the Detroit Lions?
So you're having me go first, so you can just come back and tell me how I'm wrong on everything, and that's nice. He's a little bit undersized, I think, for what you'd want if you're trying to make that ideal defensive tackle. But what I will say after that is he has that ideal attitude in terms of a guy that you want on your defensive line that is not going to take any attitude and is going to try to shove your teeth down your throat or. In terms of your head coach, I don't know how you're going to bite off kneecaps if you're wearing a helmet. That part's a bit unclear to me yet. But they're working it out. Like you said, training camp and all that stuff is coming up here. He's got great attitude. He's athletic. He gets off the ball, and he knows how to play bigger than his size. There's a reason that he was one of the top defensive tackles taken here. He's got that attitude, and even without playing last year, he sat out for the 2020 season. I think you guys got a great one. Now, you have to look for fantasy here. Is he going to be on the field? We're going to have to see how this new defense sort of uses their defensive line, like those rotations and all that. I'm not quite sure how that's going to play out because we've seen in the past, and you know better than I do, the whole defense was a mess, but just some of those defensive rotations on that line, it would drive you nuts if you're trying to find value in someone. So if he is starting, which I think he probably will, and he's getting a good percentage of the snaps later on in the season, he definitely has a chance to be relevant in your sort of defensive tackle interior line positions right off, year one.
Absolutely. The weirdest thing for Detroit is probably their deepest group after the offseason is the defensive line. Trey Flowers, they added Brockers via trade. Romeo Quar comes back as kind of their sack master, but they added McNeil and Onwuzurike, and I think both of them could push to be in the rotation for heavy snaps because really what's ahead of them is Brockers and Penasini. Jayshon Cornell is I think suspended like the first 4 weeks, so he probably will see limited action, but he's really not that much more than a depth guy. Kevin Strong, depth guy. I mean, really, these two rookies could make a name for themselves quickly because Brockers is on the downside of his career. He's in his 30s at this point. They brought him over because he knows how to set the foundation. He knows how to work hard. He's got a strong work ethic, and he can still do some things. But do they put him on a snap count? All that plays into the equation. But ultimately, in the end, I think the defensive line is probably Detroit's deepest group. Onwuzurike is probably their most explosive interior defensive lineman. If they line up more as kind of a 4-3 where they have multiple defensive tackles, I think that is better for Levi because then he's really good with his leverage. He's very disciplined with attacking his gaps. He does a great job of exploding, not only emotionally. I mean, you watch his press conferences, the dude is just a real fun guy to listen to. He seems like a guy that would be a really cool guy to have a conversation with because he's very, passionate and just a strong young man. So I'm excited to see him in Detroit. I think if you're drafting defensive tackle and you play a defensive tackle specific league, you want this guy on your team. He's your top defensive tackle in this draft. And ultimately, year one, probably DT2 is his ceiling. I don't think he's going to get enough action. And, we have to factor in him being off a year. I think it's going to take him a little time to, just make sure his body's in game shape and all those things they've been working on in the offseason. Let's see what happens. But I'm tempering my expectations, even though as a Lions fan, I want kneecap soup. Like I'm ready for some Campbell's, baby. So I'm excited about it.
Got some nice wordplay in there, throwing Campbell's knee soup. Is that your own, or is that just a buzz on Lions Twitter?
Oh no, that's just me spitballing. Tonight I'm feeling feisty, so we're gonna have to
I can appreciate it. I like that.
So that's number one. And he was actually number one for both of us. That's where it ends, though, because then after that, we are both in different stratospheres. So let's talk about your number two, which is my number three.
Yeah, and you can see where we have all these guys currently. You know, we're most weeks we're having an update on there when we find news, and you know, some of these things like we talked about with Sheldon Richardson, it might push some of the, like Twyman down a bit or something. You know, you'll have to just see how things play out over time. I'm not saying that will happen, but as an example. Anyway, my number two, yes, Christian Barmore here of the New England Patriots, the revamped, bringing the band back together sort of defense of the New England Patriots. As we know, they were completely shot to heck last year with people opting out, and then just everything on that team being different too. He has the draft capital. I liked him a lot pre-draft. He's a guy that definitely needs polishing, but when we're taking a dynasty view at this, he has all the sort of tools from run stopping, pass rushing that you would want from a defensive tackle. He just has to get more consistent and get more experience, quite frankly, because he just didn't play a whole lot in the time that he was even at Alabama. But with the team that he went to, there's definitely a lot of veterans that he can learn from here, which is great to see. And a guy like Belichick believing in him and putting his faith behind him, I like. He's just raw, but he's got that athletic ability. We talked a lot about this with the edge rushers, but it's sort of similar to him in this position. If you could sort of put together a human being to be that sort of defensive tackle, pass rusher, run stopper at the DT position in this scheme that the Patriots have, he's what you'd want. And then you throw in that draft capital, you know, he's taken mid to late second round. Long term, I love the spot. So he's a guy that you probably won't have as much immediate production as Onwuzurike or some of these other guys we're going to talk about tonight. But again, if we're looking at it from a dynasty perspective, his overall makeup and then his landing spot, I really like.
He figures to be a three tech, I would think. If New England's smart, the way that he's built and the way that he plays, they really should have him as a three tech type D tackle. And for those of you that are still learning or growing in the IDP game, three tech, you know, think of the Aaron Donald type role, just attacking, getting up the field, kind of wreaking havoc in the backfield. That's the type of role that I could see Barmore being really good in. I know at Bama, he really wasn't a full-time type starter when it came to playing the three tech position, but just watching his game and the way that he plays, he's really good using his body to just get upfield quickly and attack, you know. So if it were me, that's what I would be doing. And I do apologize to anybody who's hearing beeping. There is the alerts. No alerts about a child here in the area.
Oh, Amber Alert.
Yeah, the Amber Alert. Thank you. So hopefully they find said child quickly because they're not here, so I can't help them. But I do appreciate that they do post those alerts. I just apologize that you're going to hear some beeping every so often. So Barmore is a guy that I think projects well to the next level. He just hasn't had a ton of. I don't know that he had enough experience at the three tech to be really fantasy relevant in year one. But the way that New England, like if you look at their depth chart, I could easily make the case that he gets plenty of action this year. I just don't know that he becomes a starter early with a couple of veterans ahead of him, you know, depending on where they really truly play him. They have a couple of pieces ahead of him in Gottschall from Miami and Cowart, who's a guy they drafted in 2019. And Belichick does tend to lean on his veterans before he goes to the rookies, but Barmore's the most talented of all those guys that are on that interior part of the line. So sooner rather than later, I expect him to be playing.
All right. Well, your number two ended up being the fourth defensive tackle here, Milton Williams, now of the Eagles.
He's an interesting prospect. So when we started, when we did rookiedraftguide.com, which is the site that we do here with RotoHeat to evaluate the incoming rookie class, and we put up our watches and what we watched and our takes on these players. Williams wasn't a guy I was projecting to be somebody I thought would be one of the top few D tackles taken. I thought he needed a little bit more seasoning, and I wasn't really sure what to make of kind of how he projected to the next level. Then he went to Philly. He's not going to be an immediate guy because they got Hargrave and Fletcher Cox, and they have a couple of these older guys. So he definitely is a guy that's going to be kind of the next wave of D tackles. I would definitely think he's probably, a year out from significant playing time, but I like what they're doing. They brought him in behind a couple of really strong vets that can get him going and help get him ready. And then they can have Williams kind of be the guy after. So I like the way that Milton plays. I think he's got good size. He's a little under in the weight category, but he's got the size at 6'4" to add another probably 10 to 15 pounds and then be perfectly sized for what Philly does on the D line. So the way that he plays, I think he does a good job attacking. I think he could be a guy that could get you some action on the sack front on the IDP side of things, potentially, especially the way that Philly tends to play their defensive linemen. So I'm excited about him. He's a guy that I'm willing to take a shot on. And I think him and Barmore are kind of like, you could have flipped them on my rankings and I'd have been okay, because they both are probably still a year out from significant playing time. What do you think about him?
Yeah, I have him sort of grouped in the 5 to 8 range. There's a whole bunch of these defensive tackles that I sort of have in that range, and he's within there. Athletically, it seems like he burst onto the scene like a lot of these guys do, especially this past year, because of what he did at the combine, or what their version of the combine this year, the pro days, and he just blew people out of the water there, which is good to see. But you also have to sort of look at his body of work when he was on the field, and the reason I like Barmore more than him, although I see what you're saying about their similarities. Barmore did it at Alabama. Now, yes, he had better talent around him, but he also produced at that level. Whereas Conference USA is a horse of a different color, so to put it. And you're going to have to see him step up to this new level of play and show that he isn't just a numbers guy, because it's not like he had otherworldly production even in Conference USA. I do like the situation he's in. Like you said, if he adds another 10, 15 pounds, he's sort of a clone of Fletcher Cox, who we had mentioned is getting up there in age. So, maybe they're looking at a replacement for him. It's a great spot to learn from. Like you said, it's sort of a veteran defensive line. They have Kerrigan there that they've added, on the outside, Barnett, Graham, Josh Sweat. So, they have guys that have been there. I just don't – it feels like it's been a while since you've had a good Fletcher Cox year, or a Brandon Graham aside, I should say, a defensive lineman for the Eagles that you've really felt good about starting. So hopefully it'd be nice to see him turn that around. I liked him when we looked at him, but I guess I didn't see the third round. I think it was draft capital for him, which it surprised me. So
yep.
He's on my list. He's just a little farther down.
Yep, for sure. Jaws, what's up? Glad to see you as always. You are always one of our favorites in the chat. So thank you for joining us. We are going to keep talking rookie defensive tackles, but if you have fantasy football questions, offense, defense, whatever, feel free to post them. Trade questions, we are more than happy to chat with you guys about those and give you our insights. Our Tuesday night show tomorrow night, we've got Paul Churchin on, who is a fantasy football legend, does guillotine leagues. We'll be talking all things guillotine leagues with him. So we answer those questions over there too, but we're more than welcome to happy and talk to you about those here as well. If you want to see the rankings that we are talking from, which are Kraig and myself, rotoheat.com. I keep popping them up on the screen every so often just so you can see what we're seeing. And rookiedraftguide.com if you want to check out our players that we profiled as well. With that being said, we've gotten through 3 players so far. Let's talk about Craig's number 3 on his list, which is number 5 for me.
Yeah, and there's sort of a break, if you want to call it here. And part of this, I think, is the fact that we liked him a lot more pre-draft than clearly where he went there. He was Davion Nixon out of Iowa, ended up going on day 3, I believe it was the 5th round, to the Panthers. And there's a few reasons that I have him up where I did. One, I like this defense. It's up and coming, and I even like that offense. I think they're going to be in the second year under head coach Matt Rule, going to be pushing the ball more. He's going to have more implemented, have his guys there more. Yes, we'll have to see what Sam Darnold does, but that aside, another year of that defense, people growing. There's Derek Brown there on the defensive line, Brian Burns, Yoder Gross-Matos. I think they have a very nice young defensive line. And Nixon, when you watched him play, even at Iowa, he was explosive. And he's a explosive big dude. I don't remember, and I don't have it pulled up here, but I think he was like 6'5" something. He was a monster that can move and get pressure. It's not going to be the same, of course. The NFL is not just going to automatically do that, but it sounded like there were, potential character concerns as to why he fell. We never get the whole story on that. But it's going to be in a situation where they're not going to tolerate it, with the draft capital. He's going to have to earn his spot on the team and keep it. Play-wise, I think it'll be fine. We're going to have to see maturity-wise. We've seen guys like, what was it, Isaiah Wilson. Is that the guy for Tennessee drafted in the first round last year that it just didn't pan out? But just the complete athletic profile and even what he did on the field there at Iowa, I like the spot that he went to. I like the talent, and I think it's just me. But I think that he's going to be able to make the team and that he's not going to see these issues because there wasn't a whole lot that you heard about this or read anywhere prior to the draft. So it must have been something in interviews or other digging that they did that really wasn't open to the public.
Right. And Jaws, we'll get to your question here in just a second. Jaws wants to know if Javian Hawkins is going to be a thing, and was 311 maybe a little early for him. Nixon, to me, I think probably as I update my rankings, Nixon will wind up slotting in as my number 2 defensive tackle. The more and more I looked into Carolina's defense and just how Phil Snow does things there, Derek Brown doesn't seem like he's going to really be the 3 tech there. And typically when you're looking at the interior guys, I want the guy who's going to be more of the penetrator, the 3 tech. I think Nixon could easily slide into that role. I know right now, what's the kid's name? It's like Bravion Roy, I believe. Yep. And if you watch the show, brother, I'm sorry I butchered your first name. If I didn't,
I think you got it right.
It's because I'm sweet like that. So I think Nixon will quickly ascend into that role, and that's the player I want on that defensive line, interior wise, to attack at the 3 technique position. And you'll keep hearing me say that tonight because 3 techs are what I look for. That's what I want. I want the guy who's going to, be Aaron Donald 2.0, even though none of these guys really are. I want the guy that's attacking the quarterback, getting me sacks, because a lot of these leagues that we're in, you get big points for sacks and forced fumbles and things that if you're attacking the quarterback, you might be able to get to. So back to Jaws' question. He got Javian Hawkins at 311 in Superflex. So Atlanta Falcons rookie running back, UDFA. He wants to know if he's going to develop into a thing. And then says, oops, IDP stream. Not a big deal. We answer any questions. We don't care. We will talk fantasy football. It doesn't matter what. Tonight's topic, be damned. I like Hawkins. So coming out, he was really dynamic at Louisville. It almost was they centered the offense around him. I was really surprised he went undrafted, quite honestly. When teams like Detroit are taking guys like Jamar Jefferson in the 7th round, it doesn't surprise me that he went undrafted, but both players like that, I expect them to go 5th round, kind of in that range. So a guy like Hawkins sliding out of the draft, I think was a big steal for Atlanta. I think don't get me wrong, Mike Davis, every time he's gotten a chance, has been successful. So I think Davis is clear-cut their number 1 running back. But I think Hawkins has a chance to be a nice complementary piece. Davis hasn't always had to carry a full workload, so they're going to want to try to make sure that they don't, beat him up or in case of injury. So in a super flex, in any rookie draft this year, in the third round, you start taking dart throws on guys that you like. I don't hate it at all because I did the same thing. I got plenty of Hunter Long shares in the third round of 1 QB non-tight end premium because I went with who I liked. And thanks to Kraig, it was Hunter Long who went to Miami. So I'm all in for that. If you like the guy and you're intrigued by him, I thought he had great college film, did it at Louisville, so that's a little bit, whatever. But I thought that he had a potential to at least be semi-fantasy relevant. Give me him. I'll take him and I'll stash him and see what happens. Worst case scenario, you wasted a third-round pick. We waste third-round picks all the time. What do you think, Kraig?
I liked him a lot coming, into the draft, and it's one of those things where we saw that with a lot of these smaller guys. The NFL doesn't seem to like him as much as us fantasy owners did. You even saw it with someone to a lesser degree, but with Kenneth Gainwell, where he went, he sort of at the moment feels like only a passing down back. And I'm not saying that that's what Hawkins is, but my point is that these smaller guys sort of get pigeonholed, and the NFL, for whatever reason, seems to think that they're not going to be able to hold up, not able to handle a workload. But to your point, there's a handful of, 3-down backs in the NFL these days. Mike Davis, he showed last year to me, he's a really good running back, but he does need someone to spell him. He wasn't able to do it through the whole year. And the Panthers team had their issues, but even in Atlanta, Atlanta's going to have their issues this year too. I mean, there's a lot of things that they need to fix. And despite how much I like Kyle Pitts, I know Sully does too if you're listening, the team's very different with Julio gone in terms of drawing defensive attention. And Kyle Pitts isn't going to draw that attention where there's going to be free running lanes for some of these guys. So I think he's definitely worth taking at that 311. I'm assuming this is like a 5-round rookie draft. If he's your guy, if you need running back help, I definitely think he's going to make that roster there. And I'm all in favor of going to get your guy. So I'm fine with it.
There you go. All right. Joss, if you guys have questions, any of y'all in the chat, make sure you shoot them over. We take care of you live because we love you guys. You're the best. Now we are on to Marcus. Hopefully you're still in the chat, Marcus. If you aren't, I apologize that it took the better part of 30 minutes to get to your guy, but he's number 4 on my list. So we're going to talk about him. He plays for Kraig's team, the Dallas Cowboys. Osa, and I'm going to butcher your name, brother, because this ain't easy. Odigizua. Yep. Osa Odigizua. Talented kid from UCLA. 6'2", probably 280, 85-ish. He's on your team, so I'll give you first cracks, even though he's not number 4 on your list. He's number 5 on mine. What are you hearing in Dallas? What are they saying, and what do you think?
Well, I'm not in Dallas, so I'm not hearing anything from them. But
do you not follow any Dallas insiders?
I don't hear them speak. No.
Don't play games. Don't play games with my heart, Kraig.
That's my job. Look, the Cowboys needed defensive line help. There's no two ways about that. They have a lot of interesting pieces, but it seems like it's been that way for years with them, where, DeMarcus Lawrence is the big name guy and he's paid that way. But they addressed it with, I think, 3 picks this year and then an undrafted free agent. They have a couple guys that are holdovers. They drafted, I think it's Bradley Anii last year. Self Gallimore there. Randy Gregory is back and supposedly better than ever, which I'd love to see the guy turn it around, like supposedly he has. Jerry Jones, for all the crap people want to give him, he does not mind taking a chance on talented but troubled people and trying to get them help so they can stay on the straight and narrow. So I hope it works out for Randy Gregory because we could certainly use another pass rusher. Also, I tell you, I didn't know much about him. We looked at him for rookiedraftguide.com. I didn't do a crazy in-depth sort of analysis. And when the Cowboys took him, I had to go back and look at him a little bit more. He is able to play in this defense and sort of across the board. He can play different positions, which is nice because they have a lot of guys that they move around on the defensive line. He's a smart player. He's really good at eating up blocks. I don't think he's going to be a guy that's going to be getting you a ton of sacks at any point here, but he knows how to eat up blockers, especially for his size, being a bit undersized to what some people may like, like you said, like 6'2", 280. He ideally, I mean, if you're making a comparison to where he might fit with their new defensive coordinator, Dan Quinn's defense, poor man's Grady Jarrett, would be nice. Grady Jarrett gets not as much credit as he deserves, I think, because there really hasn't been a whole lot of else on the defensive line, but he's still been able to produce a bit for him, and the fact that people focus on him is good. It speaks to his talent. He probably, with his size and what they have, is looking like a 3 technique for the Cowboys. He has a chance to start, and certainly with that draft capital, they're probably hoping that he does because, like you said, there isn't a whole lot in front of him. I think it's like, Watkins and Tristan Hill are, quote-unquote, the starters right now. Gallimore might be one of them. But they need help. He's going to be in a spot where he's going to be able to play. I just don't see him as sort of a big producer, fantasy-wise, from the defensive tackle position. But I like the draft pick for the Cowboys, and I think he has a really good chance of being a quality starter for them.
I'm putting it out there right now. He's their best interior defensive tackle. I don't mind Tristan Hill, but I don't think that Tristan Hill has the explosiveness. I don't think he does the best playing with leverage. Like when we evaluated Odigizua for the guide, I liked what he did when it came to kind of his first step, getting hand in the dirt, first step, attacking the guy in front of him. I thought he did a really good job at that. I think there's still room to grow. I love that Dan Quinn gets this guy because I think Dan Quinn as a defensive coordinator is different than Dan Quinn as a head coach by miles. Dan Quinn as a defensive coordinator focusing on just kicking the crap out of you is going to do great. And I love what they did, focusing so much on this defense with their earlier draft picks. I mean, they didn't make an offensive selection until the 4th round. And that, and I think the defense deserved that kind of attention because Jerry loves to give guys second chances with troubled past, but Bill Belichick's the one that makes those actually successful second chances with these guys. Jerry doesn't always have the same success. So giving Dan Quinn a bunch of talented, younger draft capital to play with, I think is really a smart move. Odigizua is going to take a little time. They're going to probably roll with the veterans first. Like you said, Watkins and Hill, Hill's only been in the league for a couple of years now, but he's going to get to play probably first and foremost because Osa is going to take a little time to convert from UCLA's defensive scheme to an NFL defensive scheme, just the way it is. But I like the potential. Marcus, if you're looking for a fantasy perspective, I think this guy initially is better run defender than pass rusher, but I think he can grow into a pass rusher. So if you're drafting him, draft him and stash him with the potential of becoming, a defensive tackle 2, possibly defensive tackle 1 in a few years, not expecting him to be that in year 1 or 2. I'm really thinking he's probably more into year 2, possibly year 3, where you see him really blossom into what he could be.
And if you're not in an interior line defensive tackle specific league, you can probably leave him on the waiver wire, like you said, for the whole first year, unless something unexpectedly happens. Unexpected to me anyway, and it sounds like you too. But if you're in a league, you're deep enough where you have a taxi squad or deep enough benches, like Brad, our league where you have 60 roster spots, and you start in defensive. Well, it's interior line there, but either way, a position like that, go ahead and stash him if you have room, because I do think he has a chance to be productive, especially if you're getting into the thick of it. That I know most of you aren't. Interior linemen with weighted scoring, so tackles are more for them because they have fewer of them, and you're trying to balance things out. Definitely there. If you're just playing a straight defensive line league, you can probably leave them alone for a few years, and it might even be after that, quite honestly, because you don't see a whole lot of defensive tackles get to be really productive in that sort of league.
Right, absolutely. So, Marcus, hopefully that answered your question. If you have other follow-up questions to what we've said, definitely post them in the comments. Also, because YouTube only cares about your likes, comments, subscriptions, all that stuff. So it shows the internets that you love us and appreciate us and all the things. We love you, love us back, and smash that like, subscribe, and comment, because that's important. All right. So next up on our list would be your number 4, which is not even on my list of top 10.
And honestly, he should be lower. And
That's
honestly,
right.
sorry, Sully. We're talking about Jaylen Twyman, who is a player that I do like, and he still probably would be in my top 10. He'd probably more down around that 8 range if I'm guessing, just looking at who we have on this list here. He's a guy that I thought had fallen into a good position as far as playing time, and this is me not completely remembering and looking at all these depth charts like we talked about with Price there, Tomlinson, especially if they bring back Richardson. He's a guy that's going to be brought along slowly. But I liked what he brought to the potential pass rush for the Vikings, which they sorely needed. Draft capital isn't there, of course, but I thought he was going to have that chance to, like Brad's been talking about all night, be that 3 technique potentially. I thought he even has the ability to play defensive end. Now, I know that's not how he's set up, but they certainly would need help there. He's someone that I could see if Hunter wasn't coming back and they're trying to fill both spots, because they think they only really have like Weatherly, if I'm remembering, is a guy that they're bringing back from the Panthers last year.
Yeah, for sure.
And then they drafted Patrick Jones, though, right? Yeah. So I'm excited
about that.
Yep. Especially with Hunter back, the old saying, rising tide raises all ships. Of course, you have to have a long enough anchor line. No one ever tells you that because your boat will sink otherwise. Important safety tip there. For any of you out there boating, you probably know that. But with Hunter being back, that elevates that defensive line. If he's going to be even close to what we saw Hunter previously, if he gets close to that, I mean, he's a top 10 defensive end. But anyway, we're not talking about him. We're talking about Twyman. I have him up here too high. Like I said, he'd probably be down in that 60s-ish range if we're looking, and I'm readjusting this. So there probably isn't a whole lot from me to say. But I did like what he had as far as a pass rushing element, potentially.
Yeah, if you're looking to just draft a guy, to stash a guy, Twyman is the perfect guy to target, because he, in Minnesota's defense, could easily be that guy that, in year 2, in year 3, you really start to see progress, because Pierce is more of a nose tackle kind of space eater. Dalvin Tomlinson can be very similar. Like, in my mind, I don't know which one they're going to have attacking more, because I just haven't seen it enough in either of them to really get excited about that. I think Twyman could be rotated in to be a pass rusher, and with his size, speed, athletic profile, you could have him, like you said, on the edge. Danielle Hunter, we don't know what's up with the health, with the neck, if he's on the team, all that stuff. We don't know. So if we take that out of the equation, then you've got a rookie 3rd-round pick, a rookie 4th-round pick, Stephen Weatherly. Twyman could easily get involved in some of these other areas, but guys with higher draft capital are also there. So there's just a lot to take into the equation. So just be careful, buyer beware. If you're buying him, stash him. He's got the talent to do it, but that doesn't mean he's going to do it.
Yeah. Next is the same for both of us here. And this is one of those funny things you can see over on the website. You have him as your 6. I have him as my 5. Yet I have him farther down in the overall rankings by about 10 spots. Who's a guy that we didn't have a ton of tape on, leading up to looking at this, but the tape that we did have was impressive. How do you feel about Tyler Shelvin, Brad?
Tyler Shelvin is a really interesting prospect. So let me pull up my notes to make sure that I don't misspeak on what I thought of him. Because he's a kid that went to LSU and you didn't see a lot of, but what you saw was he could either be a nose tackle in a 3-4 or a pass rusher in a 4-3. Like, he's got the ability to do both with it, which is what, when I watched the film, I got excited about. So I'm like, listen, he's kind of not scheme dependent, because he could be an either or. And then when he got where his position went, where he got drafted, I think he's a guy that you really could see push for playing time because of the athletic profile and what he can do on the field. Push for playing time maybe a little bit earlier, And I could see him getting involved in the rotation this year and potentially being a guy that could get in there. And if he does, and they start to play him as the pass rusher, then that's exciting to me. Let him go after the quarterback, give me some sacks, sack, strip, fumble, whatever the case may be. I want it. I love it. I need it. What do you think about Tyler Sheldon?
So if you've paid attention to the stream before, which I know most of you probably haven't, but in the event that you have, I don't like player comps by and large, but one did stick out to me when I was looking at him. I'm not saying he's going to be him by any means. There's a huge chasm of draft capital that's a different between the two of them, but he gave me Ted Washington type feelings where he is just a mountain of a man that can sit down there and take up space and be a run stuffer, or like to your point, he has pass rushing ability to him. I don't think Sheldon's probably going to start. Lots of things can happen, but they have Reeder and Ogunjobi, who they got from the Browns. He's clearly not going to be a defensive end for him. So, but if you're talking about a guy, fourth rounder, who some people had a lot higher on the draft boards, being able to learn behind them, go in there, potentially, dispel them or going on obvious pass rushing downs, just to try to be a bulldozer in there, pushing his way to the quarterback. I can see it. And long term, I think he has a great chance of sticking around because we've seen it before. Back to the days of Gilbert Brown and people before him. Not that, again, he's exactly the same. But there's always going to be teams that want just a big space eater that they can throw in the middle to occupy guys, and you're going to get tackles out of them at some point. So I like him. I have him sitting at my 5, which feels about right long term. There just isn't a lot of tape on him. He needs a lot of seasoning too. He was on the championship team for LSU. For some reason, I don't think he played last year. Did he opt out?
I think he opted out. If I remember correctly.
Again, not a lot of tape on him. That year he had 48 tackles, 4.5 for a loss, and 1.5 sacks. So again, not a lot of pass rushing there, but it wasn't what he was asked to do. But I mean, you saw him and I think it was Dickerson. If you watch some of the tape of those two guys going at it, and Dickerson's a guy, if healthy, was probably a first-round pick. Sheldon's just a monster of a man. And if he gets refined and learns how to prove pass rushing a little bit, he could have a long career sitting in the middle for some team in the NFL.
Yeah, and when you look at Cincy's defensive line, like they're very top heavy. They've got good starters across there, but not a lot of depth. So I could see him getting involved if they're rotating in multiple defensive linemen throughout the game. Like I could see him getting a fair amount of reps because he's the most talented depth guy when it comes to the interior on that team, even as a rookie. Best explosiveness, best ability to just wreak havoc in the backfield. So I'm excited about Sheldon long-term. I think he'll be an interesting prospect. And for me, I don't have him much different than the guy that I'm going to talk about next because he's the next man up on my list. We'll get to your guy after that because your guy is super sexy as well. But we're talking Jay Tufele from the Jacksonville Jaguars. And quite honestly, when you look at this Jacksonville Jaguars depth chart, we can't edit that out, people. I just butchered chart with Thart. He's probably the most explosive interior lineman they have already, and they've got a first-round pick in Taven Bryan, and then a 23rd round pick in David Hamilton, and then just stuff. I mean, like Tufele was a 4th-round pick. I could easily see him if he comes in and has a strong camp. Joe Cullen could easily have him be a rotational starter early in season 1. And then that all bets are off. Then if you've grabbed him and stashed him and you're being able to rotate him in as a flex guy, because let's face it, Jacksonville's interior defensive line needs some help. Their edge rushers are delicious. I mean, Josh Allen is awesome. I like Jihad Ward, who came over from Baltimore. Caleb Von Chason, the kid from last year. Like, I like the edge guys. I don't like what they have in the interior. No. And then they went and got Tufele, and I like him. Kid from USC. USC defensive tackles have a long history of being able to make it in the NFL. Leonard Williams called. He said, I'm awesome. And Tufele has that ability as well. He can get after the quarterback. The thing I like about him is he's very scheme versatile. He can be a run stuffer. He can be an attacker as 3-tech, either or. So I think he could get playing time early. And if he's your run stuffer position, so let's say he moves into the, more of the Hamilton role as the nose, then he's getting you tackles potentially and still being able to use that explosiveness to get tackles. If he moves around a little bit and gets to attack, then maybe get you some sacks. I mean, like the sky's the limit. What do you think about Tufele? I know he wasn't next up on your list.
Yeah, I had him sort of within the same group, but like I said, most of these guys at the end, except for the last one, are all in that 55 to 65 range here. He probably is more of a 3 technique because he can get off the ball and rush the quarterback. He has a lot of athleticism. Former rugby player. He's got great hands, which probably has something to do with that. And like I said, he's got a great motor. He's got a great drive. He has a good story. If you go read up on his past too. So he's a guy that you're pulling for to make it. And out of all these guys, to your point, outside of maybe 2 or 3 of them, probably a really good chance to start and get you some sort of immediate impact. He's probably not going to get that high level of reps that you would need to be fantasy relevant this year. But hey, it's entirely possible if he shows out and continues to play like he did at USC. So I like him.
Absolutely. All right. So next up on the list would be another Detroit Lion. Man, Detroit's making it rain with these sexy defensive tackle rookie picks. Elaine Mcneil, NC State kid. He's a really interesting story. He played linebacker. He's played running back, but he's in the upper, 315-pound range at like 6'3", 6'4", like big dude, but super agile. The thing for me, the reason he slides down my list is I don't know if he's going to be the guy that's attacking. I think Levi is kind of their 3-tech, but
yeah,
I guess they could have them both do it. I mean, you can have them both rush the passer, and then all bets are off. I mean, this defensive line, both of these guys aren't going to get year 1 production. They'll both get year 1 playing time because they're both very talented, explosive players. But McNeil doesn't – I just don't think he's got the same type of ceiling that Onwuzurike has. So he slides down my list for that reason. What do you think about him?
Yeah, we both have him at number 60, which is interesting. That pegs him at 7 for me. That's 10 for you for the defensive tackles here. Sort of to the point earlier about, the whole defensive line getting better. You get more production across the board. They can't just focus on one guy. If you look at the ideal situation, no, Brad, I don't think your Lions are going to be the next Washington football team. But it can have that same sort of effect with a defensive line. You have a couple of wily veterans, if you want to call them that, with Quara and Flowers on the outside. Got some young guys with energy. McNeil really is a better run stuffer. I think that's how he's suited, but he did show the ability to get to the quarterback. But to your point, you sort of need guys playing these different roles. If you have everyone just pinning their ears back trying to get back to the quarterback, you're going to miss stuff on running plays. And that's why you have different roles on these defenses doing different things. But tackle-wise, I think he's going to certainly get you tackles when he's out there playing. And he'll have, again, even more opportunity to do that if this defensive line continues to improve, which I have to assume it's going to, unless Dan Campbell is really just a kitty cat instead of a lion. He comes off as a lion with how he's acting, but we're going to see it once you guys are on the field.
Don't you talk bad about MCDC. That guy's going to ride a lion onto the field this season. I almost guarantee it. That would be my hot take, that dude comes out riding a lion all the way to victory, baby.
I could see him just putting on Hawkinson's jersey and going out there to just light someone up, like on a blocking play or something. He looked like, if you looked at him as a player, like he can grow that long hair, sort of like Hawk. I mean, Hawk sort of looks like him as a player. I don't know what weird genetic stuff you're messing around with your tight ends and your head coach there, Brad, but kind of crazy.
Stirring it up, baby. We're going for the dub. All right. The interesting thing is when you watch so far, when I've watched Lions camp, when you get all the guys together, it's way different than Patricia. Like Patricia would sit on his little moped and scream at people. Dan Campbell's out there just rocking with the boys. Like, you could tell that Dan Campbell was a dude in the locker room. Like, people loved him back in the day. People love him now. Matt Patricia, on the other hand, like sitting up on an ivory tower throwing cheeseburgers down at people. Like, he just wasn't.
He's a Super Bowl winner. Come on, man.
He definitely enjoyed watching. He watched a lot of Super Bowls. Holding Billy B's jockstrap. That's for sure. He definitely did none of them for us. MCDC's doing it, and I'm telling you, you add Kayvon Thibodeau next year as an edge rusher, and now Washington will want to be Detroit. Like, we're doing it the same. We're doing it the same way, baby. Building that interior, get us some edge rushers in the future, and then just go to town. I mean, look at Washington. They started interior, drafted 84 first-round defensive tackles, sprinkled in a little Chase Young, and now people fear them. Like,
well, you guys can probably start Ryan Fitzpatrick next year too. So.
I don't know. If you people don't follow me on Twitter, you need to, because my hot take, Ryan Fitzpatrick is the best thing to football. Like, he may not be fantasy relevant as fantasy relevant as some. That guy's just entertaining as all get out. I love me some Fitzpatrick. But Jared Goff is the man. So quiet down.
We got 3 guys left here.
We do. Well, and this next guy that as I got ready for the show tonight, I looked at my rankings, was like, I shouldn't have had this guy on my rankings, quite honestly. Marvin Wilson of the Browns, I think it's more so that I really want Marvin Wilson to work out. I like him. I like the player. I like the potential when he's on. When he's not on, I don't want to see him on the field. Like, it's such a, like, he's a motor guy that I have concerns about, but he went to Cleveland, and I like what Cleveland's defense is and what they're doing. And I think he has potential to move up, but, again, UDFA, I know he was the highest paid UDFA, but still a UDFA who's got, Malik Jackson, Sheldon Day, Malik McDowell, Tommy Togiai, and then Andrew Billings and Elliott Jordan. Like, I'm not like super impressed by any of those guys. So I could see Marvin Wilson make a play to be a player at this defensive tackle position in year 1 with Cleveland. I shouldn't have had him right here, and this was my bad. I apologize to the world that he shouldn't have been in my top 10. He probably should be like 11, but he's more of you draft a guy you like at the end of the draft, 3rd round, Javian Hawkins. You draft a guy later that you like, this would be that guy for me on the IDP side. I just like Marvin Wilson.
I like him too, and I wish he would succeed so you could see glimpses of what you saw initially in college and even high school, and just that you see that potential for the player they could be. But whether it's attitude or some people just can't adapt to the NFL, or who knows what it is. It just hasn't panned out in college at the end of there. And to your point, I mean, your number 9, Togiai, you have him at 9, 1 spot behind Wilson, and they drafted him. He was a 5th round pick, so they had the opportunity to take Wilson. So I think Wilson probably has a harder stream to swim up than Togiai. But it's just a crowded defensive line as far as tackles that I don't want anything to do with right now, to be quite honest.
Yeah, I mean, the issue I have with Togiai, I just see him more as a run guy as opposed to an attacker, where I could see Marvin Wilson being the 3 tech, which is 3 techs have my heart, man. I will put them ahead of the run stuffers, but Togiai probably has a better chance of playing earlier. That doesn't mean he'll be more fantasy relevant, but so I just wrestled with that, So at 9 Togiai, I don't hate it, And then our last guy, Bobby Brown. So he's your guy. You talk about Bobby Brown, and we'll close it out.
He's got great athleticism. He's turning 21 in August. He is a guy that is going to get to play on the defensive line with one Aaron Donald, which has been good for people's careers. And talk about learning from someone as a young player. I love the situation that he's in. And to your point about having a guy that you put at the end there that, hey, you're going to throw your dart at and hope that he pans out. I mean, he's got everything that I wanted, and even really draft capital. I mean, he was a 4th round pick. I mean, it's nothing to sneeze at. So you throw all those things together with a guy that, showed he's going to be able to stop the run and grow as a pass rusher with that sort of physical skill set that he has. Sign me up.
Yeah. Yeah, I take a different approach with my dart throw, but I think your dart throw is a very smart play because if you watched any of the Hard Knocks or anything that you hear about, Aaron Donald is a coach on the field. Like he does a great job training the defensive line group with him. He works with them and helps them grow. I think Bobby Brown is a great dart throw, a great stash piece. My worry is that Aaron Donald is also going to be the guy that keeps him off the field because they
Could be, yeah.
they have Sebastian Joseph Day and a few other guys that are more the nose tackle type players. Like it's hard for me to see Bobby Brown be that kind of more nose run stuffer type guy, but he has the ability to do it. So, ultimately they'll put the most talented guys on the field and maybe it also is more so the fact that I think they'll be controlling the clock because they've got just an insane offense. When I was building the back half of this top 10 at the defensive tackle, I kind of went with the guy that I think could get playing time and be on the field. And I went with Marvin Wilson, and I'm regretting that, and Togiai, and I'm regretting that. I think by this time, even next month, my defensive tackle top 10 will look very different as we get closer to training camp. So I think you were spot on. I think you made a great choice there.
And that's it for our defensive tackles. But I did have a trade I wanted to run by you quick here at the end, Brad, for the viewers, and they want to throw in their thoughts here. It is a straight one defensive player for one defensive player, which you don't see a whole lot.
No.
As some background, I have a rebuilding team. My current linebackers before this trade were Isaiah Simmons, Devin Bush, and Devin White, and Fred Warner. Those were my four. There is no flex in this league. The league is transitioning from 2-2-2 and a flex to 2 linebackers, 2 edge, 2 defensive backs, and interior linemen. So we sort of switched it up there. So you only have to start 2 linebackers. My only edge player going into this offseason was sort of a dart throw that I'm banking on talent coming out here in the end with that revamped Vegas defensive line, but Clelin Ferrell is my only edge guy. So I traded, and this is using the Roto Heat IDP scoring that we have on the website if you're curious, but it's, a point for a tackle, half for an assist, 3 for a tackle for a loss, 3 for a sack. So it sort of balances out. I traded Fred Warner for Bradley Chubb as hopefully my edge one, but
yeah. Okay, so yes, I see. I was just thinking of him as linebacker. I'm like, why would you trade a linebacker for a linebacker? All right, you know what? I oftentimes just bring the looks to this show. Craig's the brains. I'm the sex. I bring the sex appeal. I think it's a great move because I love some Bradley Chubb. I think I know he's been hurt quite a bit. And then with Von Miller out, teams could focus on him. I think he's one of those guys that's flying under the radar that potentially by the end of this year, you could be looking back and going, that was a steal for me. Because I think that sets you up. Your linebackers were good before that. And now this makes your edge set. I mean, I just I love it. I don't have any issue with it at all. I think it was a great move for you. I also am going to put our IDP scoring in the chat if anybody wants to go see the scoring that he's talking about. I just put it up here so you can see what it looks like. But we did a show all the way back in May 13th of 2020. So over a year ago, we did a IDP scoring show. So make sure you check that out if you want to see our scoring specifically. But in the end, I think you made out well. IDP leagues, it's hard to trade because I think what happens is people don't often know how to properly evaluate a guy. So if you can get your guy without having to give up draft capital or some of these other things, I don't hate it at all. Fred Warner, I think probably would have been worth more. Like if I was trading Fred Warner, I probably would have said, hey, can you throw in a third or a second or something, and then try to use he's been, Chubb's been injured and I'm taking on a lot more risk than you, blah, blah, blah. Like I might have tried to play that angle, but I love the deal. It builds your edge. I think it's great. I think it works out well. Off the schneid with that LB depth, it's a great trade. Thank you, brother. I appreciate the comments out there. And fun fact, we are getting that man on our stream in July. So make sure you go over and subscribe to his content and follow him on the Twitters and all those things, because we're excited what they're doing, but we definitely are going to be even more excited to have him on. And we're going to talk to him on the Tuesday show in a few weeks here. So did you feel good about that trade? I
did. We had originally, because, when we're adding, so, if you take away a linebacker, potential starter with that flex, like I said, the depth isn't as important, and I can always, in this league, find some guy to, stash as a fourth linebacker. I needed edge help. I had offered originally because I have 3 interior linemen. You only start 1. Don't need them all. I have Leonard Williams, Jeffrey Simmons, and Javon Kinlaw. So we were talking about that, but he was more looking for a linebacker because with this, most of his linebackers ended up being edge guys, and it just sort of ended up being a fit where he had edge to give up. He had, I forget, but he has like TJ Watt, Montez Sweat, and then there was
plenty. He's got plenty of depth. Yeah.
So it was sort of, a nice fit for the two of us. Like, hey, we can just swap. Ideally, they're both going to be top 15 guys at least at their position. So, and with Chubb, yeah, he'd been injured, but explosive when he played even last year. And he's young. I think he's 24 right now, or going to be 25 this year. Still a lot of time on his side, so it fit what I'm doing with my team. So I was happy with it. I mean, you just don't see a whole lot of one player for one player straight up trades at all, really.
No, not often. I've got, from the offensive side of things, I've got a couple guys trying to do player for player straight up trades right now, but the IDP side, you just don't see it very often. So well done, folks. That's it. We spent an hour and change talking the sexy world of defensive tackles. So hopefully it was enlightening and encouraging and helpful. We thank you guys in the chat. I've got it up here on the screen again. Our rankings are over on rotoheat.com. We do IDP, we've got Devi, we've got Superflex, we've got Standard, we got all the things plus more. We've got great content the team is putting out. We've got a lot of things happening over on rotoheat.com. So make sure you jump over there. Take a look. Sully's been putting up some of his top 50 players, and Anthony just put up an article on Josh Palmer. So there's a lot of good content going up on there. We want to make sure you guys get all the great content, all the great information. My Devi Pod is back. I've been recording those and getting those up. It's a one-man show. Check it out all over there at RotoHeat. Make sure you follow Kraig over on Twitter, because he's been joining a lot of great shows lately and having a lot of fun conversations, and he's bringing the gift game up to another level. He takes it up. He lifts it up like Hulk Hogan used to lift up Andre the Giant. So make sure you follow him over on Twitter. Follow me on Twitter if every so often you want to tweet, because every so often I tweet, whatever. We love you guys. We thank you. Tomorrow night, again, Paul Churchin, the man, the myth, is going to be on talking guillotine leagues. He is the king of guillotine leagues. He's a legend in the fantasy industry, Hall of Famer, all that fun stuff. He's going to be on talking to Sully and I. So join us tomorrow night. Otherwise, we love you guys, and we will talk to you again soon. Peace.
Also, right there, playlist. Hit it. Watch the videos. Do it. You want to. Do it.
Please disregard. It's been spamming my phone this entire